So I think I have a fairly normal relationship with the Scooby-Doo franchise. I grew up with it around, I watched it a bit as a kid, and now I think about it roughly every 6 months or whenever NerdSync puts out a new deep dive that makes me appreciate it more than I thought I ever could. Anyone that knows Scooby-Doo knows that there's some bangers like Zombie Island or the live-action movies, with Scooby-Doo 2: Monsters Unleashed being my favorite. The movie isn't very well rated, but I think that's just because critics don't get it, and I will die on that hill. I think a lot of people will just write off a movie that's meant for kids, or it's just as easy to say. Since it's meant for kids, it doesn't have to be, or it's not even supposed to be good. A lot of live-action adaptations of cartoons fail for various reasons and fall into obscurity, but luckily I think Monsters Unleashed avoids this. First of all, it was written by James Gunn, which helps. He has a great way of adapting outlandish concepts and infusing them with a certain maturity while still keeping the fun, often absurd nature intact. It also helps that Scooby-Doo is a fairly blank slate to start off with. Most of the characters can be summarized with single words. You've got the smart one, the pretty one, the one with the driver's license and free time, the stoner, and the dog. But that just means that as a writer, there's room to grow and develop your versions of these characters however you want. The simplicity also makes the barrier of entry extremely low for any new viewers. As far as live-action adaptations of cartoons, or in the case of a lot of movies today, comic books, I think Scooby-Doo Monsters Unleashed should be treated as the blueprint. And in case you haven't seen the movie, I'll give a quick recap before getting into my deeper analysis. Of course, this is your spoiler warning. Watch it on HBO Max or find it at your local bargain bin if you want to watch it before getting the whole thing spoiled. At the beginning of the movie, Mystery Inc. has long since been established, they've unmasked a lot of people, and they've grown their respective audiences. The opening of the movie is the gang going to a red carpet opening for a museum exhibit featuring all of the monsters that they've unmasked throughout the years. The fan clubs for each character are fun and silly while still being pretty realistic in my opinion. I personally believe that this is a universe where K-pop never really took off and all the stands needed somewhere to direct all of their passion. And I love that each group has their own personality. Fred is swarmed by a group of girls like a teen heartthrob.
I got an ascot for each of you.
Daphne's fans are little girls inspired by her, and also these guys.
Daphne! Hi! We love you! We have you tattooed on our chest! Look!
The totally not queer-coded Velma has a totally not queer-coded fan club.
I love her so much!
And Scooby has his dog fan base, because I guess he's still trying to break into that human demographic. And Shaggy recognizes his fans because they all smell like, food. And the scene featuring the exhibit is a great showcase of all the different villains from the classic show. And we're only 6 minutes in and I'm already starting to feel feelings. Velma and Patrick, Seth Green's character, are really adorable and I just want the best for them.
There's a symposium coming up on the syntactic reasoning in the criminal brain.
I have always found a criminal's inclination to incorrectly use the interrogative pronoun in place of the relative delightfully absurd.
Me too.
The celebration is cut short when there's an attack and oh, what? The monsters are real this time? The bad guy gets away with 2 costumes and Mystery Inc. is smeared and absolutely embarrassed by the press.
When asked for comment, Fred Jones, leader of Mystery Incorporated, had this to say.
Little old Coolsville can solve its problems without us.
I didn't say that.
And I guess little old cool
I did,
have
but
to.
that's out of context.
After the debacle, Fred, Daphne, and Velma talk shit about Scooby and Shaggy like they're not even there.
It's all my fault. I'm the one who told Shaggy and Scooby to get the ropes. No, Velma, it's my fault. I should have checked that they were tied before I let go.
It's my fault, too. We all know how Shaggy and Scooby can be.
Shaggy and Scooby decide that enough is enough, and it's time to become more serious detectives.
Scooby-Doo, raise your right paw. No, your right paw. Scooby-Doo, your other paw. Now repeat after me. From this day forward, we will no longer be our goofy selves. We will be awesome detectives.
The first step, of course, is
the right attire. I'm sorry, Daph, but your go-go boots didn't fit me.
they try their best to keep up with the rest of the gang.
Alas, what are these strange markings?
Words.
Who connect the attack to Jonathan Jacobo, the original pterodactyl ghost. He died a long time ago, but his old cellmate, Old Man Wickles, just got out of prison.
The Black Knight Ghost.
So Mystery Inc. decide to pay Wickles a visit, get harassed by the cancel culture mob.
Hey! Nice job last night. Losers!
Quick, we need to think of a comeback.
What dorks?
Hey! Shut up!
and get trapped in Wickles' basement. Daphne, the most capable member, gets them out and the gang searches for clues. Shaggy and Scooby try their best to be good detectives, but of course they can't resist messing around with this old guy's stuff. Wait, is that Baby Got Back on a gramophone? That might be the rarest thing they've found. Anyway, the rest of the gang find a book on how to make monsters that used to belong to Jacobo. Despite their best efforts, Shaggy and Scooby find a lead on Wickles.
Hey, like what's this? The faux ghost. Hey, we're in luck. It's tonight, Scoob.
And if your unironic response to that is, he could have written that last week, then you just don't get this movie. The gang's investigation is interrupted by the Black Knight ghost, and Daphne, the most capable member, fights him off while Velma finds his weak spot. Back at Mystery Inc. HQ, Scooby and Shaggy find an excuse to sneak out and head to the faux ghost. Velma tells Daphne and Fred that the pterodactyl scale they found has high levels of randomonium, which is a key ingredient in making monsters. And if your unironic response to that is, really, it's called randomonium? That's so ridiculous and silly and also bad, then you just don't get this movie. Randomonium is a byproduct of silver mining, and there just happens to be an old silver mine just outside of Coolsville. Before they can take the next step in the investigation, Patrick shows up and Velma panics. Daphne gives Velma a pep talk and a new outfit.
Who's your mommy?
And I just love the implication that Daphne just happened to have this outfit in Velma's color scheme lying around. At the faux ghost, Scooby and Shaggy go undercover in, chef's kiss, immaculate disguises.
Hey! Everyone part like the Red Sea. It's me, Shizzy McCreepy, and my brother, SD McCrawley. We are in the house and ready to partay.
It fools everyone, and if you can't get on board with that, we can't be friends. Shaggy tries to get information from Old Man Wickles, and oh god, I'm feeling feelings again.
All of us here ain't nothing to admire. We needed people to believe we were different than we were. Maybe because we believed that there was something wrong with who we were in the first place.
I love Peter Boyle's performance in this scene. He goes from sympathetic to unsettling in an instant.
Are you kidding? If I see those twerps, I'd tear their eyes out of their skulls and make them eat the one eye while watching themselves eat it with the other eye.
Shaggy tells Scooby not to attract attention, so of course he starts a dance number. I love that Scooby is such a Chad in this scene, and he just has a human body while he's in this disguise. And if any of that takes you out of it, you don't get the movie and we can't be friends. Meanwhile, the gang get back to Patrick's exhibit at the museum, and they find it ransacked. Fred gets ambushed and canceled by the fake news mainstream media.
You're doing that thing again where you take everything I say out of context. You're trying to make it look like I think Coolsville sucks. No! Don't record that!
All Fred Jones had to say was,
I think Coolsville sucks.
Daphne confronts Heather, thinking she's the one behind all the attacks, but then the masked man comes back and gives a warning to Coolsville and Mystery Inc.
Mystery Incorporated!
Scooby and Shaggy find Patrick going full Arkham on someone, trying to get information on who keeps breaking into his museum.
Where are they?
Hear me? Now I want you to question all of your scumbucket friends. You'll find out what they know about those stolen costumes, or else you'll be known from here on in as the soiled underwear ghost. I want answers! Now go!
Yes, sir.
Now!
And I just want to take a moment to appreciate Matthew Lillard's performance in these movies. Not only does he sell us on the idea that he's really interacting with a cartoon dog,
Your mom eats cat poop.
but he also does a convincing job seeming intimidated by Seth Green.
What's the matter? You don't believe me?
Now that's acting. Shaggy and Scooby, disguised as bushes, follow Old Man Wickles into the old Coolsville mining company.
Darn bushes yowling at me again.
This movie strikes a perfect tone. The implication that bushes, disguises or otherwise, yelling at Old Man Wickles is a common enough occurrence to be like mildly irritating is such a hilarious throwaway joke that fits perfectly into this world. They follow Wickles inside, stumble upon some skeleton monsters, and try to get away. Fred, Daphne, and Velma get to the mining company. Velma's still hung up on Patrick. Daphne feels insecure about her capability and her place on the team, and Fred is just trying his best.
Do you think I'm just a pretty face?
No. I mean, yes. I mean, not fat. Definitely not fat. Is this sort of what you're looking for?
They break into a meeting between Wickles and a group of shady-looking evil dudes. Once they bust in, they realize that Wiggles is just pitching a child labor camp to a bunch of professional money havers.
Young man, we're investors, and we're listening to his pitch.
They can have an authentic mining experience. They can dig for 18 hours straight, just like in the golden days of yore.
Nothing out of the ordinary here.
Are you continuing the work of your old pal, Jonathan Jacobo?
Accusations start flying and the money havers GTFO. Meanwhile, Shaggy and Scooby find a strange lab and immediately start eating stuff. Hubba hubba awooga. Now, I'm probably not the first person to say this, but the 2004 CGI really shines here. A lot of people like to complain about how Iron Man's head looks floaty, but this is like those AFV clips where they're funny because the face makes a face. Shaggy gets buff, hubba hubba awooga, and Scooby becomes, I think that's supposed to be Yoda? I don't know. As powerful as this combination would be in the field, Shaggy's pecs nearly rip a hole in space-time, and Scooby becomes too sentient, realizing existence is pain, and he wishes to return to Monkey.
Oh, I long for the blissful ignorance of my former self, chasing cats, licking my own rear end, eating my own vomit. Oh, those were wonderful times.
Me too, Scoob. The gang regroup and find the machine that turns costumes into real monsters, but to get the rest of the costumes, the person would have already had to have had a pterodactyl fursuit, costume. Velma connects the dots and realizes
Patrick's the one.
he's the only person who could have started all this. Fred, Daphne, and Velma investigate a strange sound and leave Shaggy and Scooby with the Boppet of Doom. They start messing around with it and animate all of the monsters.
We're the greatest detectives! We're the greatest detectives!
And this bit doesn't really fit into the summary, but I just want to appreciate one of my favorite Shaggy moments.
Come on, Scooby-Doo! You're not being calm! I needed that. I needed that too. You're pushing your luck, Scoob!
The others come back to find all the monsters.
Quite operational.
They grab the control panel and the greatest cinematic chase scene ensues.
We're gonna die!
Think positive.
We're gonna die quickly!
Back in Coolsville, the masked dude issues an ultimatum.
Turn in Mystery Inc.
Turn in Mystery Inc. or be inconvenienced.
My monsters can make life very unpleasant.
The cancel culture fake news lamestream woke media tells the gang to turn themselves in to appease the masked man.
Turn yourselves in.
Meanwhile, Mystery Inc. hide out at their old clubhouse. Fred does a bit of his arc.
Hawkins for wimps.
Shaggy and Scooby do some of their arc.
This is the most our faultiest screw-up ever, Scoob.
And we get a nice flashback of the group being young and stuff. I love seeing them just being friends and spending time together. Then Velma, the second most capable member, finds the solution to their monster problem.
Sometimes the answers would just appear like magic. Hey.
It turns out if you just make a monster backwards, then you unmake the monster.
Well, just maybe.
We could reverse the current, and therefore reverse the monster-making process.
Yes.
Outside, Shaggy and Scooby feel left out, what with being outside and all.
Like they're totally having a montage in there without us.
And then Bigger Boot attacks. They shake him and head back to the mining company. They get back there to find the Black Knight Ghost waiting for them, and the greatest cinematic battle ensues. Fred jousts the knight on a motorcycle that just happened to be there, and if you don't love this as much as I do, we can't be friends. Daphne fights electricity and dies, while Fred gets impaled and dies.
I'm afraid. What a wimp, huh?
Fred does some of his arc, while Scooby, Shaggy, and Velma get the control panel back to the monster hive. They encounter the skeleton monsters again, and Velma decides she'll distract them while Shaggy and Scooby finish the job and get the control panel back to the thing so they can Control-Z all the monsters. They don't think they can do it, but Velma tells them what they needed to hear all along. They are capable, they are valuable, and they're heroes. Fred and Daphne get their second win just in time for the Black Knight Ghost and the 10,000 Volt Ghost to come back. Daphne, the most capable member, blows them up. After dealing with the skeleton ghosts, Velma finds herself in a shrine dedicated to Jonathan Jacobo. Let's just put a pin in that because I want to come back to it after we get to the ending. Patrick moseys on in and Velma susses him out and tries to run away.
Don't wait, Jose.
After falling through a grate, Velma comes to an understanding with Patrick. She decides to trust him, but then he gets taken away by the pterodactyl ghost. Scooby and Shaggy are on their way to the control room, but oh no, they're locked in with the cotton candy glob. Or more accurately, the cotton candy glob is locked in there with them. The masked figure catches up with the gang and nearly defeats them, but then when all hope seems lost, Scooby finds a weapon capable of fighting the tar monster. Is that how fire extinguishers work? Who cares?
It ain't that kind of movie.
Scooby gets the control panel where it needs to be, and we get an incredible name drop.
Who do you think you are?
Scooby? Scooby? Go!
He unmonsters all the monsters, and the gang unmasks the masked guy, who turns out to be a masked lady, who turns out to be a masked old guy. Specifically, Jonathan Jacobo.
But how do you know this?
A photo. Taken of Jacobo in front of the Coulsonian. Jacobo supposedly died a year before construction even began.
So Jacobo survived that fall off the prison wall.
He also adapted the false Heather Jasper Howe persona to turn the press against us.
And then he framed poor hideous old man Wickles by putting that book in the Black Knight Ghost in his mansion.
Oh, this man just cannot catch a break. So back to the shrine. Now that we know that Jonathan Jacobo was behind it all, did he make a shrine to himself? I genuinely don't understand what that was. Anyway, everyone's arcs are tied up.
Hi.
We get some more laughs and cue credits in the Bollywood ending. I love this so much, and I think every movie should have a Bollywood ending. Does it make sense in universe? No. Who cares? Just have fun with it. Something I really appreciate about this movie is how faithfully and respectfully it adapts the source material. Scooby-Doo is a cartoon, so it makes sense that the adaptation would be cartoonish. I think that gets lost in a lot of adaptations. Especially at the time, the studio could have easily taken away the colorful costumes, replaced the Mystery Machine with a black tank, and they could have gotten rid of the talking dog. But I think if you give Scooby-Doo the X-Men treatment, then it just turns into something along the lines of Criminal Minds. I appreciate the way that this movie treats the source material and constructs a universe that feels a bit silly, but the silliness isn't out of place. Absurd things happen, but it's taken seriously. For example, Fred jousting the Black Knight Ghost on a motorcycle is absurd, but the movie takes it 100% seriously. It's not played for laughs or presented with a detached sense of irony, and I think that makes it funnier, for me at least. Everything this movie does, it does sincerely. It's very similar to what Leslie Nielsen did in his most iconic roles.
Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry I have to wake you. You a doctor?
That's right.
In Airplane, they didn't cast a comedic actor for his role. They cast, at the time, a serious actor. If the classic line,
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley,
was in a movie today and it was delivered by Ryan Reynolds with a cheeky smile and nod to the camera, it wouldn't have the same effect. To oversimplify, when a comedic actor delivers comedic lines, it can come off as a little desperate for a laugh, while a serious actor will commit to the lines and commit to the bit and deliver it 100% seriously. Not only does it give a more convincing performance, but it also creates a great juxtaposition between the material and the delivery, elevating the comedy of the situation. Not only does it help with telling jokes, it also shows a lot of respect for the movie that you're making. It's nice when movies don't take themselves too seriously, and it's even better when movies respect themselves enough to be unironically silly. And this same praise also applies to Adam West's rendition of Batman. That's right. You thought it was a Scooby-Doo video, but it's actually a Batman video again. I appreciate the earnest adaptation of the Silver Age source material and the way it manifests in things like Batman and Robin's detective work. The 1966 Batman movie features a few scenes showing Batman and Robin deciphering clues left behind by the bad guys and using their sharp intellects to solve the case.
Listen to these riddles. Tell me if you interpret them as I do. 1. What has yellow skin and writes?
A ballpoint banana.
Right. 2. What people are always in a hurry?
Russian people? Russians.
Right again. Now, what would you say they mean?
Banana? Russian. I've got it. Someone Russian is gonna slip on a banana peel and break their neck.
Precisely, Robin. The only possible meaning. A clear threat to Miss Kitka's life.
And the easiest jaded modern reaction to that is to point out how ridiculous that is and how it's so silly and not at all grounded in reality. Maybe, and hear me out on this, that's the point. Now, I talked about this in my last video. After the backlash to Adam West's Batman from people that didn't get it, the character of Batman was made a lot darker and more realistic. And part of this shift was the Dark Knight trilogy. A huge selling point of those movies is how they're grounded in reality. This is a realistic Batman. He doesn't wear a silly costume with nipples or any colors other than black. And all of his gadgets are something that you could conceivably believe that a real weapons manufacturer would make. Now, here's why I don't like it. It seems to me that there's this conflation between making a movie realistic and constructing a cohesive universe. A movie can resemble real life, but still have a lot of glaring plot holes. A movie could also have a lot of fantasy elements that are physically impossible, i.e. most interesting fiction. But as long as the narrative commits to the universe that it establishes, like I said earlier, the viewer can suspend their disbelief and immerse themselves in whatever fantasy you present. And that's what superheroes are, fantasy. Trying to bring fantasy stories closer to real life diminishes the fantasy elements, while putting real people in a fantasy setting heightens the story. And that's why Star Wars works. Luke Skywalker is just a regular guy being thrust into a magical adventure greater than he could have ever imagined at home. The Dark Knight reduces Batman by taking away key elements of the character like Robin or his friendship with Superman and the rest of the Justice League. It takes away a lot of what makes Batman special. It's like if you took Hercules and made him just some guy from Chicago that likes to lift weights. And what makes it worse is now that you've constructed a world so similar to real life, anything that stands out really stands out. How does Batman's grappling hook work with no harness and such a small form factor? How does Batman fight so well without moving his neck? How do people not think that the guy buying Batman cowls and black spray paint in bulk might be Batman? Well, it's a lot harder to say, who cares, it's just a fun story, enjoy yourself, when you've put so much effort into making the story as realistic and not fun as possible. Oh yeah, my thoughts on Scooby-Doo Monsters Unleashed. I think it's a fun time. I think for the most part it's aged pretty well for being from 2004. I mean, anything from 2004 will have two things age very poorly: the CGI and the humor. I think it could have been a lot worse. The CGI isn't the best, but it's forgivable since it's a cartoon adaptation. As far as the humor goes, there are a couple of fart jokes, but no homophobia from what I can remember, so points for that. You know, that makes it better than most of its contemporaries.
That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?
I think this movie is fun in a really innocent way that new superhero movies could really learn from. Monsters Unleashed does a lot of things that I think are lacking in pop culture, at least in recent history. I don't like the attitude that if you're adapting something to live action, you have to make it gritty and realistic. Monsters Unleashed doesn't forget its roots, and it actually leans into the cartoon elements. They're bringing the cartoon into live action. They're not bringing live action to the cartoon. And that may just sound like a semantic difference, but that's the best way I can think of to explain how I see it. It's like when I brought up the Dark Knight trilogy. I think a lot was lost in that translation. Instead of Batman being brought into real life was brought into Batman, if that makes any sense. It's to the point where it barely feels like Batman anymore. Now, I'm not saying the movies are bad, they're competently made by an acclaimed director. But you gotta ask yourself, why is this a Batman story? To me, it feels like a character based on Batman, but tailored more for the average Black Rifle coffee customer. Monsters Unleashed, on the other hand, respects its source material and prioritizes it and blends it with real life just enough to make it not feel like a fever dream. Personally, I'm glad that they kept the cartoon dog and they didn't try to make him look more realistic, because if they did try to make him look more realistic, then he would fall straight into the uncanny valley, and then, ironically, he would look less real. And I love the Mystery Machine. It's iconic, it's silly, it's a core element of Scooby-Doo, and maybe it would feel out of place in real life, but luckily, movies are not real life. And I also appreciate sincerity in media. It feels like a lot of comedy these days is covered in so many layers of irony, and oftentimes the joke is like someone cares about something, i.e. most of South Park. Or other times the joke is the movie pointing at itself and saying, look how ridiculous this is. As you've seen in this movie, Monsters Unleashed is a very funny movie, fart jokes aside. The humor is creative and also dumb in a very smart way, fart jokes aside. For example, I personally love Buff Shaggy. The humor in this movie is a very refreshing contrast from a lot of now commonplace humor that revolves around, ooh, isn't this situation awkward? And like I said before, pointing at yourself and saying, look how crazy this is. Overall, I'd say Monsters Unleashed is a great template for translating something like a cartoon or superheroes into live action. I feel hopeful about the future of superhero movies, props to James Gunn, and hopefully the trend keeps going more towards leaning into the fun aspects of superhero stories. The Suicide Squad is a great example of how a movie can be mature but still be fun. And overall, I guess if I had to pick one takeaway from this video for you to think about, it's Monsters Unleashed is a better movie than The Dark Knight. Okay, bye. Anyway, subscribe so you don't miss my next upload. Like the video if you liked it. If you didn't, YouTube says you can't do that anymore. Sorry. I have a podcast because of course I do. So go check that out. Link in description. And yeah, have a day.